But I remember when I first started, though, I thought, man, what a curse. If only I could fix up my own properties, I could save so much money and not have to hire people. And then I realized that was a gift, not being good at that, because it forced me, one, to underwrite better deals so I could afford to pay, contractors to fix up my homes. And two, it gave me the time to go do the stuff that I'm meant to do. And that's to find the deals. That makes you a lot more money than swinging the hammer. And so that's just stuff that over the years I've learned, hey, sometimes it's better not to even go down that road and just hire people right from the get-go that are amazing.
This is the real estate investing experience. We get it. Real estate can be rough sometimes, and that's why we bring in the experts to talk about the experiences you won't hear anywhere else with your hosts, John Cohen and Chris Grinzik.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Experience. I'm your host, Chris Grenzig. With me, as always, is John Cohen. How's it going, bud?
I got no complaints. Hanging in there. It's the week after Thanksgiving, trying to pick up some pieces of some stuff and hanging in there. No complaints.
Yeah, it's always an interesting week. Nobody works the week before, so everybody's trying to pick up a little bit, get stuff done before the holidays, but some people just treat this period from now until the holiday period as one long holiday and kind of just coast along. So it's not always easy getting stuff done.
That is so true. People decide that, the year is over. And I think this year in particular, more than ever, I think people are just mailing it in. So it's going to be interesting.
Yes, everyone's done. Everyone's fed up with 2020. Everybody wants to move on, whether it's coronavirus, the election, other things going on. I mean, this year's had a whole lot into it. So, I think everyone's a little bit done, wants to move on to the next year. So we'll see what happens as we kind of wrap up, December. But also a good opportunity for a lot of people who aren't going into holiday mode to try to pick up some deals, get some things done when other people are sleeping. So if you're somebody, looking to get a little bit of a head, get a little bit of an edge, now's the time to do it because people go into a little bit of a hibernation right now. But we got an awesome guest on. Yeah, but we got an awesome guest on today. Excited to hear his story, learn from him, hear about his experiences. So that being said, Mike, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to kick things off? A few minutes, just a little bit about you, your journey, your background, et cetera.
Sure. Let's see. Where do we start? So I've been investing in real estate for about 31 years now. So I kind of paid my dues along the way, but I got into this game totally by mistake. It was never even on my radar. I was actually living my parents' dream for me. I was going to law school and managed to rack up a whole bunch of student loans and got a job at the phone company to try to pay them off before getting my next degree. And while I was there, bought my first piece of property, and my mortgage broker called me up shortly after I bought my home and goes, "Hey, Mike, you're making good money and your credit's good. If you want, I can get you another mortgage." And I remember thinking to myself, well, why do I want another mortgage? And he goes, well, you buy another property, you put a tenant in there, they pay down your rent, and eventually you got, 25 years down the road, that's your retirement. And so I did. I never get those calls anymore, by the way.
Sure.
For you qualify for a mortgage, but so I bought a second property and bought one close to where I live, put a tenant in there, and then a couple years after I did that, the market just shot up, and all of a sudden, I was sitting on all this equity, and I was thinking to myself, man, the last 2 years at the phone company, I made X amount, and in real estate, I made a lot more money, and I don't even know what I'm doing in real estate, and I was pretty much sold after that, and I promptly quit my job at the phone company, promptly told my parents that, hey, I'm not going to law school. That's your dream. That's not my dream. And also promptly managed to lose most of the money I made on the first couple of deals. I managed to lose them on the next deal because I had no clue what I was doing. So, but here we are 31 years later, and definitely seen some ups and downs. And but, like I said, paid my dues, and now I get to reap the rewards. So.
Awesome. And what are you focused on today or the last few years?
Yeah, so I've got basically three main revenue streams over my career. I've managed to build up a portfolio of cash flowing properties. So that's one revenue stream. My second one is I had a lot of people when I first started. All my friends thought I was nuts, and they said, "Mike, you're not going to make it as a real estate investor. Are you kidding me?" And then when I finally did make it as a real estate investor, they started to come to me and go, "Okay, well, we used to make fun of you, but we want to do this too." Mm-hmm. And so They thought they could take me to Starbucks and over a coffee, I could teach them everything I knew. And of course, that of course doesn't happen. So anyway, instead of just buying, a couple of properties for myself, I started to buy larger amounts of properties, and I'd fix some up for me, some up for my friends. And then I started to get calls from my friends' friends. And to make a long story short, I started to put videos on YouTube because I got asked a lot of the same questions. So I just sent people, hey, here's a video answering your question. And then I started to get people from all over the world coming to me looking to, get into the real estate game. So I have a turnkey operation in Atlanta. So we buy properties typically from the banks and fix them, put tenants in place, put our property management team in place, and we sell them literally to investors around the planet. So that's the second revenue stream. And then until COVID, I used to do, I did trainings like once or twice a year. And I take people for 3 or 4 days, usually to Houston, Texas. I teach them how to do tax deeds, for example. And that would be it, once or twice a year. And the rest of the year I kept open because I basically live off my passive income from my properties. And then COVID hit and started to get tons and tons of calls to be on podcasts and summits and radio and this and that. And anyway, to make a long story short, it led to me using Zoom to create some online trainings this year. And so I've kind of been busier than ever. COVID kind of took me out of semi-retirement and put me back into work mode a little bit because I've been kind of hunkered down. So it gave me a little bit more bandwidth. Because normally I'm a nomad and I bounce from place to place to place. And that's one of my passions is travel. And of course, COVID put a bit of a monkey wrench in that. So decided to be productive and help as many people as I can because so many people are struggling this year.
Sure. I love that. And, like we said, it's definitely been a hard year for a lot of people. So do you just do the single family stuff or have you gone out into other different asset classes?
Yeah, well, I've done some apartments along the way, but I always seem to come back to single family. And the reason for that is, with my typical lifestyle where I'm traveling full time, of course, I'm not doing that now, but when I'm doing that, it seems like whenever I get into, when I've done apartments, there's always stuff that requires me. Mm-hmm. Whereas with my single family homes, I've got teams, I delegate to them and they pretty much, I empower them to make decisions for me. And whenever I had apartments, it didn't seem to ever go that smooth, at least in trying to automate mm-hmm. and delegate everything. And so, yeah, I do mostly single family these days. And it works really well for me because it doesn't take up any of my time typically.
Interesting. Do you have any thought process on why you found it maybe not tougher, but it didn't just jive quite as well in the multifamily space versus the single family? Was it like just the people you had in place, too many things going on? What was the difference? Do you know?
I think the bigger difference is with a single family home, when things go wrong, they're usually pretty minor. And so, I mean, I tell my team to call me if a house burns to the ground or somebody dies. Yeah, let me know. If somebody's late on rent, I don't need to know. If an appliance breaks, I don't need to know about it. And it seemed like with apartments, just bigger things just required my attention. And I think it's also because I've been, I started off with single family and I got really, really good at it. And sometimes when you get good at something, our ego sometimes wants us to do bigger and bigger and bigger things. And sometimes it makes just sense to just rinse and repeat and keep it really simple and just do what's working for you. And so I always seem to go back to that. And so that's what I'm doing. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, I love that. There's niches and riches, and we talk about it all the time, why we stick to certain markets, why we stick to, mostly multifamily with a couple smaller things we do here and there. But our bread and butter is there because once you start learning something, the amount of time you spend on it is significantly less. The time you take trying to find answers to new problems is significantly less. The comfort you have in it is significantly less. The time you can spend looking at deals is significantly less. It just all goes smoother. And like you said, if you're traveling around the country all the time, that money's making you money in the background and you're actively working on other things to make you money. You don't need to add time to your already busy schedule. So I think that's something that people severely undervalue when they're looking at deals and new things and, expanding.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is for a lot of us, we always feel like, oh, okay, well, I've mastered this. Now it's time to do, we always feel like we need to add something new. And I think sometimes, automating the stuff that you're already doing, making it, work very passively for you, and then taking that time to find hobbies. And I used to be a workaholic, so I'm a recovered workaholic, and now I've become a playaholic. Mm-hmm. And so I recommend people, don't get bogged down. I have a good buddy of mine, and he he flips hundreds of homes a year. But if ever I want to actually go hang out with him, like if I want to have a conversation with him, I got to hop in his car and go looking at home to home to home, and he's just driving around the city all day. And it's like that. I mean, we work in this business, at least I did, to get freedom. And sometimes getting in this business gives you the exact opposite. You might have the money, but you don't have the time. And so that's one of the things I like to preach to people is like, you don't have to do the bigger, more complicated thing. Do the thing that's working for you, automate it, and then go find things that you love. Go find things that light you up and that make you happy and fulfilled.
Mm-hmm. So I think a ton of people would love to obviously not have to work or have things running in the background or have, multiple streams coming in where you had to spend very little time per week or per month on those things. And, they're constantly bringing stuff in. What were some things that helped you kind of automate or systematize your operations and, your investments that have led you being able to spend very little time on them?
Well, I think the biggest thing was mostly mindset, because there was a point, and I think most entrepreneurs go through this, where when we start up a business as an entrepreneur, that's our baby, and we don't like just anybody to touch our baby. And so I remember when I started off in Canada, and a good buddy of mine moved to Las Vegas, so like probably 16, 17 years ago. And so I'd go down to visit him, and every time I'd go there, the home prices kept going up. And back in those days, a lot of people from California were moving to Vegas to lower their cost of living, and they're starting to do that again, of course. But now I started to work in not just two different markets, but two different countries. And I had no choice but to start putting people on my team. Had I had a choice, I would have never done that. I would have just kept doing it myself. But anyway, so I hired my first property manager because I couldn't collect rent, obviously, at two places at the same time. And so there's, I think, 3 different phases. The first phase is solopreneur, where we try to do every single thing ourselves. We don't put anybody on the team, it's just us. And then we go to that next phase, and I call it the micromanager phase, where, okay, when I've got somebody on my team, but I want to know every little thing that's going on. Okay, an appliance breaks, let me know. Somebody's late with rent, I need to know. And then I realized, I remember there was one week where my property manager called me, one property that the fridge had broken. And I told him, hey, if it costs more than a certain amount, see what it costs to fix it. If it's over that certain amount, replace it. Mm-hmm. And I remember a few days later, he called me a different property. This time it was a dishwasher that was, broken. And same thing. I told him the exact same thing. And then it kind of dawned on me, like, why are we doing this call? Why am I making him call me with the same thing over and over and over again? It's not like I can control it or change it. It's just, so anyway, so I started to put policies in place. Okay, anytime an appliance breaks, here's what we do. And then I started to realize, hey, I'm starting to get some of my time back here. We're not, micromanaging can take just as much time as doing the job yourself, because you're on the phone all day. And then you get to that third phase, and I call it the freedom phase. And that's where you get the proper people on your teams that like, and trust. They've got your back. You take good care of them. They take good care of you. And then you start to get your life back. And so it started with me getting a property manager in Vegas. And then when I started to see, hey, he's collecting more rent than I do when I collect my own rent. Because I was collecting my own rent. I was doing my own property management in Canada. And he was getting a lot more rent than I was, because he treated it like a business. And I'd always try to become friendly with the tenants, thinking, oh, well, if they're my friends, of course they're going to pay. And that's like the dumbest thing ever. Don't try that. So then you get to that third phase. And when you start to get good people, you realize that they've got their own systems that actually are probably better than your systems, or, you can train them on your systems if you find that necessary. But once you start to do that and put a whole bunch of people in the different positions on the things that you're doing over and over and over again, then you get your freedom. And, like I said, that's what allowed me to, travel full time. And I do a lot of volunteering. I spend a lot of time with my grandkids. So, once you can put your business on autopilot, then you can actually go and do the things that actually matter. And so it took a long time to get. This didn't happen overnight, by the way. I wish it, I got a property manager that I just started loading up my team. It was a process, but once I started to do it, the turnkey properties I sell, that's in Atlanta, by the way. I spend very little time on that. It's my money, my teams, my systems, but this all happens in the background while I'm doing the stuff that I love. And so it's kind of a long way of saying, you got to start, you got to get some people on your team, and then you have to find the right people that you can actually trust so that you can step back, because otherwise we tend to be too involved.
Mm-hmm. I think you touched on a number of great things there, and it's stuff that as I'm starting to expand and have other people, it's something that I realize a lot. I guess one of the key components of that, though, and you said it, was finding the right people. Have you found anything over the years that's been especially helpful in finding right people, or is it just a, hire quick, fire quick type thing? Like you're not going to know until they're in there. Like what have you found the most successful for finding good people? And then also what have you found to help keep them, motivated and with you for a long period of time?
Yeah, well, a few things. Number one, A players tend to hang out with other A players. You're not going to find somebody who's an awesome property manager that hangs out with really crappy contractors. That's not going to happen. And so sometimes just finding one key person may lead you to pretty much the rest of your team.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, as you get more successful in this business and start to do more deals, everybody wants to be on your team when you're winning and when you're doing a lot of transactions. So in Atlanta, for example, where we're doing the turnkey properties, we've got 13 different teams that rehab our homes for us. And so, each of the teams knows that, hey, well, if we don't do a good job or if we go over budget or over time, well, Mike's got a whole bunch of other teams. We want to make sure he's happy. So there's a few things that, make this easier as time goes on. The good news is also that, these days with the internet, 31 years ago, it was a lot tougher to build a team. These days, with the internet, we can look at people's reviews, we can connect with other investors, find out their experiences. And to answer the last part of the question, I think you really need to treat people like they're part of your team and not just an employee. You got to treat them, give them some skin in the game. So the more successful I am, we give bonuses and we treat our people really, really well. So it's all about having the right culture within your business and where people don't want to go elsewhere. But like I said, when you're first starting, the trickiest part is, your first team's going to be clunky, and over time though, it gets better and better. And you're going to start to, you'll probably find at one point, you're going to find one key player and they're going to be connected to a whole bunch of other key players. And then things will get a lot easier.
Gotcha. No, I think that's good. And I think obviously, like you said, like-minded people attract like-minded people. So I'm sure that's super important. I guess one of the other things too that I thought of while you were talking is, if you're out doing all these different things and you've got all these people working for you, how do you make sure that the things you want to get done are getting done and doing it in a timely manner, in an efficient manner? Like you said, on budget, on schedule. Do you have different metrics you look for? Do you have different sheets you put together, different reports? How does that work for you?
Yeah, one of the things to getting your time back and having your freedom is you don't want to have like 100 people all reporting to you. So I don't have meetings with like everybody on my team, but I do have people on the ground. Like I've got one person on the ground and his job is to oversee the rest of the team in Atlanta, for example. And so basically you want to kind of give one person on your team your vision, let them know what you're trying to achieve, and then let them oversee all the other day-to-day stuff. Because it could be a full-time job just, doing meetings and having phone calls with the people on your team. So I have some very, very few people on my team report to me. And usually they only report to me if something really major is going on that I need to be aware of. If it's just, I very rarely have meetings with the people on my team. My team kind of bosses me around. Like I've got my marketing team, my main marketing person's based in Frankfurt, Germany. And she's always telling me, hey, Mike, remember you said you're going to make that video for me? Where's that video? So my team actually bosses me around. But for the most part, there's only 2 or 3 people that ever really talk to me on the team. The rest of them are looked after by somebody else who's in a management position.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious too, because I think one thing that people probably worry about as they give responsibility to other people, and especially if you only have 1 or maybe 2 people that, do your job for you, especially if you spend a lot of time out, is obviously them thinking that, they don't need you or they can go off on their own and do it. Or, they should have a bigger piece of the pie or what may be it, right? Of just, hey, I'm doing all this work and, I'm working for somebody else. Have you ever had that conversation with the people that are working for you? Have you ever experienced a problem with that, or how have you combated that in the past?
Well, yeah, the biggest thing is obviously if somebody wanted to duplicate, if they were working for me, wanted to duplicate what I do, there's a lot of capital involved. So to go and have a turnkey operation, well, we're sometimes buying 20, 30, 40 homes at a time from a bank. So, if somebody wanted to leave my team and go do that themselves, they'd have to have a significant amount of capital, first of all, to even be able to get started. But the other thing is it's all how you treat your people. Like I said, making them feel like they're, part of something. They're part of something bigger than just what they do every day, than that one thing that they do. And then the other thing is, as an entrepreneur, we're kind of dreamers, and we have this big vision. There's a lot of people that don't have that. There's some people that are really, they're a lot more task oriented. They're very good. I give them a to-do list, and it's something that would take me like, a month to get done. And they'll call you, but they'll 2 hours later, it's like, oh, I'm done. So everybody's wired differently. There's some people that aren't really good at being the dreamer and seeing a really big grand picture of what it could be. But they're really good at doing the day-to-day stuff. And so everybody's just wired differently. And it's a matter of having the right people in the right positions. If you have somebody who's very entrepreneurial, they're probably not going to stick with you that long. So you really want to get people that are not, that are not likely to say, hey, I see Mike's getting a really big piece of the pie. I want to go duplicate that. You want to get people that, they're really good at the things that they do. And like my marketing person, she sees what I do every single day, but she has no desire to go and do what I do. She loves what she does. And so we're all wired differently. It's just a matter of finding the right people, putting them in the thing that they're passionate about, that they're good at, but also treating them well and giving them, if you have a really good year, give them an extra little bonus so that they feel like they're significant to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think you touched on something super important, which is obviously finding people with skill sets that are different than yours and complement your weak spots. I know myself, to-do list, there's stuff that'll take me forever to do, or, things with a lot of detail, or, tracking down numbers like, accounting and spreadsheets and asset management. I mean, John and I had a conversation, 6-7 months ago, and I said, honestly, I'm just really not that good at it. We should really get somebody else in that can do this way better than I can. And we've had someone step in the last 3-4 months that, has kind of filled that role and has, done a way better job than I could ever do. Because I just sit down and I look at that spreadsheet and it's just like daunting and it's just terrible. So,
oh my God.
Yeah,
if I do my own spreadsheets, I would have been out of business a long time ago. I'd be in so much trouble.
But I love the aspect of like looking at a deal and underwriting it and trying to see if it's a good deal or a bad deal or what can happen with it. I like the planning and the big picture stuff for sure. So yeah, I think it's really interesting that you talked on, because sometimes it's hard for us to imagine somebody enjoying something that we don't like. Because you're like, oh, why would anybody like to do that? I can't stand it. But then you talk to other people who are like, oh, I love doing that. I love, making a to-do list and crossing stuff off. But I make a to-do list and I cross stuff off and I just see the stuff I still have left to do. And at the end, I'm just exhausted. So I think you bring up a really good point of just like, hey, finding those people that are going to do the things that you're just not good at.
Yeah, and it's amazing, and I used to feel the exact same way, exactly what you said. It's like, well, why would anybody want to do this? But there's people that love that. There's people that love property management. To me, that's like the worst job on the planet. There's people that love doing all the paperwork. It's like once again, if I had to do my own paperwork, I'd probably be out of business years and years and years ago. So it's a matter of just finding those people that love the stuff that you hate.
Yeah. I'm laughing, and John kind of laughed too, because I moved Florida to start managing a property and I've never done it before. And I'm pretty confident I'm not going to love it. But for me, the thought process and the thesis is, all right, let's do it for as short a time as possible to learn it a little bit and then find somebody that can do it for me. So at least when I talk to that person, I have a little bit of an understanding, or I'm dirty enough to be like, either make suggestions or know whether they're doing a good job or not. So for me, that's always been something that's super important, of like, whenever I'm going into something or doing something new, I always want to at least try it myself first to a certain degree, to at least try to understand it or get a good idea of how it works instead of just completely handing it off to somebody else. Because then it's really tough to know whether somebody's doing a good job or not. Is that something you've done as well, or are you different?
I used to feel that way, mostly because I felt like, hey, I'm not going to let somebody else do any of this stuff because I don't trust anybody. So that's how it started. And then, over time I've learned, okay, there's certain things that I absolutely hate. I don't even want to know how to do it. I just want to get good people, just like right now. I remember when I first started, I have 2 left hands. I don't know how to, I'm really pissed that you go to Home Depot and buy a hammer and it doesn't come with instructions. So, there's some things that I would never have in a million years gotten good at, even if I tried. I probably would have, I would have cut off some fingers by now. So there's some stuff that I know that for sure that I don't ever want to touch. But I remember when I first started, though, I thought, man, what a curse. If only I could fix up my own properties, I could save so much money and not have to hire people. And then I realized that was a gift, not being good at that, because it forced me, one, to underwrite better deals so I could afford to pay, contractors to fix up my homes. And two, it gave me the time to go do the stuff that I'm meant to do. And that's to find the deals. That makes you a lot more money than swinging the hammer. And so that's just stuff that over the years I've learned, hey, sometimes it's better not to even go down that road and just hire people right from the get-go that are amazing. Like, for example, if I have to learn I know a little bit about marketing because I watch some of the stuff that my team creates for me. But if I have to go figure out how, from the start, how to do that and operate all the software and the bells and whistles. And once again, I don't think I ever would have made it in business. And so I think it's really important to figure out, hey, what are the things that are necessary for us to do in our business? What are the pieces that have to be done by us? And then delegate just about everything else. And it's okay to get to, put your, for example, with the property management for you, it's okay to get a taste of it. But I think if you're like me, you're gonna really appreciate your property manager once you replace yourself. So, because that is to me, property management. It's kind of like if you bought a McDonald's franchise, and then you thought, you know what, I think I'm gonna go flip burgers today to save on employees. That's like the worst job in real estate, at least for me, because tenants are really nice to you before they move into the property. And they're always polite, and they call you back on time, and they show up on time. When they owe you money, whole different ball game. And one of the big bottlenecks that you can find in your real estate business is when you try to manage too many, meaning like 3 or 4 properties. That in itself can be a full-time job, as I discovered early on. And but I think it's good that you're starting with just one, get a taste of it. And I hope you have an awesome tenant. But your first problem tenant, you're going to realize, hey, now I know why I don't do property management.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's actually 16 units, but yeah.
16 units. Okay.
At least it's one property though. It's not spread out. So we'll see how it goes. But John,
you have a big appreciation for your property manager that you eventually hire. You're going to have a huge appreciation for them after you go through it.
Maybe, or I'll just realize they all suck and I'm the best.
Or that too. That sometimes happens.
It's gonna be one or the other. But so I know exactly what you're saying, because we have a mobile home park that we own that when we were buying it, when we would go there, do our due diligence, the tenants were our best friends, right? During due diligence, complaining about the owner. And then the owner, he was the original builder. Since we've taken over the property, the tenants have gone in the complete opposite direction, and the collections they've been great, but it's a battle literally month in and month out to get them to answer the phone, and literally have to show up there. And I'm not doing it. It's the, the girl that works for us or is the partner on the deal. And it's just mind blowing to me how that happens like clockwork. And she calls me and she's like, well, the tenant told me this. I said, don't even tell me what the tenant told you, because it's a lie. They never tell the truth. They always it's always a story. It's always something. So it's just been funny to hear talk. Chris, you'll probably experience it very shortly. At December 1st, you picked a great month to take over with all the holidays. Tenants don't like to pay their rents in these months, but they just start with these excuses, and it's been really comical. And I've been, when I first started, it was buying all tax liens, and we had tenants. And shortly thereafter, the first multifamily property I bought, I used third-party management from the beginning. I've fired a ton of managers, but this mobile home stuff that we're doing it all internal with our own resources. And it's just been the stories that come to my desk. It's just, you thought you heard it all until this, and it's been very funny.
I can definitely relate to that. And, I've also been a lender as well. I've done hard money loans, and same thing. When people want to borrow money, they act a certain way. When it comes time to pay it back, whole different ball game. You're always a bad guy. So been there, done that. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, it's been a fun week for me so far. The online portal, they haven't activated the ability to pay online yet. So I've been trying to coordinate with 24 different people to try to get payments done. And I'm also in the properties in Jacksonville. I'm in Daytona until Friday because my apartment's not ready until then. So I'm driving back and forth every day. I'm in Daytona now. I'm going to be driving up there in a couple hours to go check on some things, try to collect some rent because today's the 1st, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's been a fun couple of days. Let's put it that way.
Well, I know what it's like on the 1st of the month. Absolutely. But at least it gave you an excuse to head to Florida from New York. So there's a silver lining there.
Well, I'm definitely a colder weather person. So right now it's good, right? 60, 70 degrees. Can't really complain, but we'll see what happens in a few months when it starts hitting 90s and hundreds. I'll probably start melting and I'll be singing a different tune. So we'll see how it goes. How has it been like for you and, your properties and the operations for your other stuff as COVID hit and, through the past 9-10 months?
Yeah, it's the first, well, with my personal portfolio properties, we have some really good policies in place. We didn't wait for COVID to hit to have a policy, because there's numerous times in my career where a whole bunch of people lost their jobs, like 2007 and 9/11. And so this is not the first time that we've seen mass layoffs. And I mean, it's been particularly bad this time, but we had some policies in place. And so we're getting almost all our rent, which is great. With a turnkey operation, at first, the first couple of months, like nothing was selling, and I was fine with that, because until they sell, the passive income goes into my bank account. Then we sell the properties and we reload, we buy more, and it was very slow for the first 2 months. And now the stock market's bounced kind of back to where it was, which is crazy to me. But in any case, it did. A lot of people are pulling their money out of the stock market, and we're selling more properties than ever. We're almost out of inventory now, as a matter of fact. And also, a lot of our previous buyers, they've been buying more because they're really afraid. They don't want to keep their cash in the bank. They're afraid to get into just about everything else. But the one thing that no matter what happens, people are going to need a place to live, and they're either buying or they're renting. And right now, we're going to see probably a mass exodus of owners going into the rentals. And so we've been busier than ever, but we're having a hard time getting inventory, because now, of course, there's the banks there's a moratorium on foreclosures. So the banks aren't foreclosing, which I'm glad. I mean, I hate to see them throwing a whole bunch of people out on the streets in the middle of a pandemic. That would be horrible. But it's making it very difficult for us to get bulk properties from the banks. So we're having to buy one here, one there. And then the third part of my business, the training, that part's I was, when COVID first hit, I went back to Canada, where I'm from, and that's where my daughter, my grandkids are. So decided to, I thought that's probably the best place to hang out. Mm-hmm. And for the first couple of weeks, I was just like sleeping in every day. I had normally I'm running to catch flights, and I have to be at the airport. I had nowhere to be, and it was like awesome. First 2 weeks of sleeping in, no alarm, no nothing. Mm-hmm. And then I started to get calls from people with podcasts and summits, and everybody wanting to know, hey, what's happening? What's going to happen with real estate? What's going to happen with the economy? And anyway, to make a long story short, somebody I know who has a summit kind of made me her official mentor to her students. She teaches wealth creation, but not the real estate part. So mm-hmm. It started off as me teaching her students, and then it kind of grew into doing some online 3-day events, which led to a 1-year-long group coaching program. So I've never been busier, as crazy, and I'm enjoying it, because I can't really do my usual bouncing around and volunteering. The things I normally do, I can't do right now, and so it's been good for keeping me busy. But I would not have predicted that. So COVID has some weird effects in some good ways on me, because it's I think it's kind of important. I'm recording all my best stuff and putting it out there, and then when things hopefully get back to normal, hopefully in 2021, I'll be able to help a bunch of other people who may want to get into real estate or running into trouble financially. So it's been good, but it's been a very weird year.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned having certain policies in place that you found helpful. What were some of those things that you thought benefited you, that you learned from previous hard times?
Yeah. So here's what we did. A few weeks before rent was due, we basically called up the tenants and said, listen, we know that obviously a lot of people are losing jobs right now. A lot of people are spending more time at home. First of all, are you guys all healthy? Are you all good? So we started off the conversation like that. Then we basically said, hey, you're going to be spending a lot of time in the homes. Everything good in there? And we always take really good care of our homes. So we knew they're not going to say, oh, well, can you repaint this and mm-hmm. build us a new fence? The homes are in really good shape. So most of them didn't, really need anything. And then we basically said, hey, well, you know what, if they were still working, great. That was the end of the conversation. We just said, okay, well, let us know if you need anything. If they weren't working and they were going to be struggling with rent, we made a list of different, things that they were entitled to, got from the stimulus package, whether it be at the federal level. We did the homework for them because a lot of people are very, very lazy and they won't do the work. So we actually did the research and said, hey, well, here's some different things you might want to apply for, see if you qualify for them. And, so we kind of laid that out for them. Then the next thing that we did was we offered to, if you guys have to do a cash advance on your credit card, no problem. We'll eat the fees, whatever that is. And then, most of these people were able to get money from one of these sources, but if they absolutely couldn't, then what we did is we would basically tell them, listen, the owner of your home, he's not going to be able to make the mortgage payments if you can't pay rent. And so eventually he's going to lose his home and he's going to lose the home and you're going to unfortunately be out on the streets. And so we then offered, a lot of tenants, they assume that their landlord is this billionaire who's living on a yacht with not a care in the world. Mm-hmm. And they don't realize that we're just regular people that are, we were smart enough to invest our money to make it work for us, but we still have we still have payments too. We still have bills and we have to put food on our table too. So we just kind of made it more human to them. Hey, the owner of your home, he's not this billionaire, somebody who needs, he needs this money too. And what we offered to do is, we'd say, hey, you know what? The owner, he can go 60 or 90 days without a payment, no problem. But anything that you get behind, we're going to tack on and divide by 12. And over the next year, your rent's going to go up. So you're going to get caught up on it. So we just made it very clear that they're not going to get a free ride. We're not going to evict them, but they're also not going to get a free ride. It's got to be a win-win and fair to the owner as well. And anyway, by doing that, we got probably somewhere between 92 to 95% of our rent. The other thing that we do with the turnkey property specifically is we do lease options. So every single one of our tenants is working on purchasing that home. And so it also led to us getting better quality tenants to begin with. Mm-hmm. And basically saying, hey, listen, if you don't make the payments, then we're going to rescind your right to purchase this property. We're just going to keep you on as a regular tenant. And of course, they don't want that. And so just having certain strategies in place beforehand, having a policy on how you're going to deal with things. This isn't going to be the last time that a whole bunch of people lose their jobs. It probably won't be hopefully this will be the last pandemic, but there's going to be other times where the economy is going to tank again, and you have to have policies in place. And that's why, some of the stuff that I'm seeing a lot of landlords right now desperate because they haven't had rent in like 6-7 months. And that's actually a really good, source of for people that are trying to figure out, hey, where am I going to find, distressed sellers? That's a very big segment of the distressed seller population is landlords. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of them are getting zero, and just having simple policies in place that can totally change the game with that.
Gotcha. No, I think that's great. I think it's similar thing to what a lot of people eventually figured out, probably not as quickly as you did or some other people. Obviously, this is the first turn for a lot of people, we'll say, during hard times or recession, whatever you want to call it. So I think obviously that's where that experience bit comes into play. And I think it was interesting when you talked about the stress side of things, because I don't know about you, but we've seen very few distressed opportunities come around. I mean, all the markets we're in, rent collections are 90% plus for the most part. We've heard here and there some people that are struggling a little bit, but not like, they're not collecting half their rent or anything like that. And again, it could be because, we're looking at multifamily properties where, the risk is spread out across, several or dozens or hundreds of tenants. So it's a little bit less likely. Have you started seeing distressed opportunities become available, or you just anticipate them coming up in the near future?
Well, right now we're kind of in a bit of a bubble, and the stuff that we're seeing, government, stimulus packages, and there's a lot of stuff going on. It's artificially keeping the market where it is. Mm-hmm. There's also, we're seeing a lot of people that they're kind of burying their head in the sand, just thinking, oh well, it's not a major problem yet because they don't have to pay the banks, for example, that, they're not making their mortgage payments. But I've seen this too many times. I think and also there's a shortage of properties on the market because a lot of people don't want, people wandering through their house. And so we're seeing that, prices are going up in a lot of markets, which is totally crazy if you think about it with what's going on right now. But I think that is probably going to burst in, next 180 days or so would be my best guess. we're probably going to see a very, very big transfer of wealth taking place. And we're already, we're seeing it more in the commercial space now. We're seeing, up here in Canada, for example, Hudson Bay, which is it's like the Macy's of Canada. It's been around since I think the 1600s. They're not paying their rent right now. Mm-hmm. And so, we're seeing JCPenney, going, bankruptcy. We're seeing we're already starting to see it. It just hasn't trickled down yet. And things, like I said, are being artificially propped up. That's not going to last forever, especially now the election's over. That will have a big impact, because obviously if you're trying to get votes, you're going to try to keep people as happy as possible, for example. And I'm not taking a side, I'm Canadian. So, but what I'm getting at is there's been a lot of things this year that are not typical. And so we're kind of in that bubble right now, but I think that we're going to see a massive amount of people in trouble, people unable to afford their mortgage payments. I think it's just the tip of the iceberg, especially if COVID, the numbers keep going up. More and more businesses are going to, not reopen. So we're starting to see some things here and there, but overall, the worst or best is yet to come, depending on how you look at it. And, I think one of the reasons why I love teaching people how to invest in real estate is I love teaching people that, I don't even like the term real estate investor. I like the term problem solver. And there's going to be so many people struggling and having lots and lots of problems. And if we're on the front lines, creating a win-win for these people and helping them, either stay in their home if possible, or at least give them a soft landing where they're not going to be, on the streets, put them in a better spot than where you found them, there's going to be a ton of opportunity. And I think it's not too far down the pipeline, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. So I think it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens, because it's definitely the same thing in the States with large retailers not paying their rent or going bankrupt. There's a bunch. I don't even remember all of them or any of them off the top of my head. But I think definitely the hotel retail side has been severely impacted, but we haven't really seen anything on the multifamily residential, the self-storage. I'm sure, the mobile home park side, we haven't seen too much. So I'm curious how much bleed over effect there's going to be from those other assets, especially with, the pending possible approval of a vaccine as that gets distributed in, the first half of next year. And we'll see how that goes. I'm sure that's going to be, a mess of things, but, that could start to tip things in the favor of recovery. But, who knows, right? We thought this was going to last 2 weeks, 4 weeks at the beginning. And, now we're on month 9 or whatever it is. So,
it's going to be interesting. And, some things will actually benefit, like self-storage probably will benefit tremendously. Mobile home parks, anything affordable, that sort of stuff is actually going to benefit from this. Also, when you look at different markets that are, very affordable, where there's jobs. So I'm thinking about Atlanta, because I'm obviously very heavily invested there. That's actually one of my favorite markets. But a place like that, where the government's very business friendly, and so there's always new jobs being created. There's going to be a lot of people leaving expensive places and going to more affordable places, and also where there's jobs. And what you're doing, going from New York to Florida, that's certainly nothing new, but we're going to probably see more of that. In California right now, a lot of Californians are leaving for like Phoenix and Vegas and Idaho, of all places. And so it's really the goal, if you're going to be successful during these times, is to be in the path of progress, see where people are going to get there before they get there, and at least in droves. And that's where the money's going to be. And we're seeing a lot of changes as a result of COVID in terms of where people want to live, what they can afford. There's going to be some pretty massive, lot of movement from one city to a different city, or even people like if you're a lot of people leaving Manhattan, going out to the different boroughs. A lot of people not having to go to an office anymore. So now they're going to go a little bit further where they get more for their money. So those are some of the trends that we're going to see. And you always want to be in the path of progress. That's the key.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned something early on, and I might misquote it, but you said, a couple decades ago, people moved from California to, I think you said Las Vegas, and now they're doing it again. Did that trend ever reverse? And the reason I asked that is because when I was in New York, I was living on Long Island, which is, just east of the city. And I moved into Brooklyn for a couple of years, and I talked to all my parents, their friends, their family, all that age. And everyone was shocked because the trend was at their age when they got old enough, they moved out. And then we saw this reversal basically of all the, millennial, Gen Y, Gen Z moving into the city. And then now obviously COVID has kind of triggered it going out again, as well as people moving away from these areas. Did you ever see that trend reverse in that one example or no?
Yeah, what ended up happening is Vegas started to get very expensive. Now, relative to California, it wasn't that bad because California is extremely expensive, but a lot of people were leaving to lower their cost of living, and then it got to the point where, okay, well now we can lower our cost of living, but it's not as dramatic, a difference as what it used to be, and so they started. Then they started to go to Phoenix, and they drove that market up, but it really did kind of slow down for quite a while. That was a trend that went on for quite some time, and then it started, when the 2007 crisis started to happen, then we started to see it kind of slow down. But what we're seeing now is people realizing, hey, we can't afford this lifestyle anymore. We can't afford to stay in California, and the taxes are ridiculous. But on top of that, so people will often do, they want the opposite of what they've got. So California has like the really horrible taxes. So where are they going? A lot of them are actually going to Texas right now too. That's another place they're going to because there's no state income tax. You always want the opposite of what you've got. So, once again, if you follow the trends and see where people are moving to, and especially if they're moving in large quantities, and I know so many people have left California in the last few months. It's crazy. But yeah, Vegas is definitely, at one point, everybody was moving from LA, Vegas. We were seeing tons of it. Now they're getting more diverse, and they're going to a lot of Texas, Phoenix, some Vegas still, and a lot of them are going up to Idaho. I don't know what the appeal is. I'm actually a warm weather person. I'm the opposite of you, Chris. So to me, I'm always thinking, oh man, I would never leave the beach for nothing against Idaho, by the way. It's beautiful, but I think it'd be hard to leave the beach for that, but that's just me. But a lot of people are going there too, because it was very affordable. Now that is no longer the case. Those numbers have gone up quite a bit there.
Yeah, no, I think it's an important point. I think a lot of people that get into real estate investing learn very quickly about out of state and why people are doing it and that path of progress thing. But it's funny when I talk to family members or friends that don't really understand or get it. And they're like, oh, why don't you just buy stuff in New York? Like New York's a great place to own real estate. And that's a debatable opinion, right? People will say yes, people will say no. But then the thought process a lot of people have is, oh, well, you're just buying it somewhere else because it's cheaper. And it's like, it is cheaper, but that's not the reason. There's more reasoning behind it. And it's often, it's where people moving, the yields are better. We like the job growth, things like that. And, once I kind of explain it to people, if they care enough to actually listen, some people just, do it as a throw comment. But once you start talking about it, then they really start to understand, the thesis behind it. But when people aren't involved and aren't really thinking about it, they don't really understand, the movement, the migration of people and, kind of getting into that path, even if it's been going on for a while. I mean, people have been moving to the Carolinas, the East Coast, Florida, Tennessee, Texas for years, probably decades. It's still happening. I mean, my sister's friend who lives in Jacksonville, she said, every other person she meets that's 20, 30 years old is from somewhere else. So the amount of movement that's still happening is tremendous. And that's why you see large amounts of population growth in these areas, a lot of job growth, a lot of rent growth. So, there's a reason behind it. So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. And I think you hit on a really important point though, not going to market just because it's cheap, but you're going there because of the ROI. There's plenty of cheap markets and there's a reason why they're cheap and they give you a horrible ROI. Mm-hmm. So, but New York is a very, very tough place to get a good return on investment these days. It's a great place to inherit somebody else's properties that they bought a long time ago. Mm-hmm. I think getting into today's numbers, it'd be, at least from what I've seen, it'd be pretty tough to make it work. And then the other thing you have to look at when you're getting into a market, if you're buying to hold, for example, you have to go somewhere where it's landlord friendly, because if you go somewhere where it's very hard to evict a bad tenant, you're done. You're in so much trouble. Mm-hmm. And so that's another reason why I would avoid California from, I like to visit there, but I will never own a rental property there because you get one bad tenant and they can wipe you out.
Yeah. That's the number one reason I give a lot of my friends and family about why I'm buying in Florida versus New York. I just said, look, I don't want to deal with the mess that happens when, you have a tenant that doesn't pay. I mean, there's people that go months or years without, getting out or paying rent. And I'm just like, that's a headache I don't want to deal with. So for me, it was always, let's go somewhere where that's not a problem and, just kind of deal with it. But there's plenty of people that are willing to deal with it, right? Like you said, there's tons of appreciation that has happened. The supply and demand in the city has been, asymmetric for a number of years, which is why rent has continued to go up, taking COVID out of it, but I'm sure it'll bounce back. I would be shocked if it doesn't to a certain degree. There is a reason people continue to invest there and continue to park capital because it has been in demand for so long and people have wanted to be there. So yeah, I think it's all about just understanding what you want to look for, what you can deal with, what your capital allows for, and, just kind of backing into, where those ideal places are and those ideal assets are.
Yeah, absolutely true. And, it's a good thing though. We all have different kind of needs and wants. If we were all fighting over the same market, then we'd all be in big trouble. So it works out well.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's an awesome place to wrap up. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing everything you shared. And I'm sure you've got a ton more, so people are going to want to check it out. So if people do want to follow you, check you out, learn more about you, get in touch with you, where can they do all that stuff?
Yeah, best bet is just to go to my website, which is mikewolfmastery.com, mikewolfmastery.com, and wolf just like the animal. So really easy.
Awesome. Guys, definitely go check it out. I'm sure there's a great wealth of information there that you guys can learn from and pick up little tidbits here and there. And thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you're not already subscribed, it would mean the world to John and I if you would do so. And if you are, please send it to someone that you think would get a tremendous amount of value from this show. Mike, once again, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome.
Thanks a lot for having me, Chris. And you too, John. Good to see you guys.